Hey, how are you? My name is Felt. Welcome back to some Deadlock. Today we're going to be talking about Paradox. Paradox is actually one of my favorite characters in the game. I really like their kit. I think they're actually positioned really well in the meta right now, being able to pivot between deathball-y roamer who throws bombs and swaps with people to mid to late game gun carry, believe it or not, with a pretty powerful gun that'll shred people before they really know what's happening, as well as just being able to be a support character. I think that the win rate of Paradox right now is a bit low because of so many reasons tied between people just don't know how to play the character well at higher levels. The most recent changes have confused people a bit on what to level in what order and what abilities even do anymore. And also, people kind of tout them as a beginner-friendly character, and I don't think that that's true at all. I think that their skill floor is a lot higher than most people make it out to be, and people mistake a really good gun for beginner-friendly. So let's hop into this character and start this beginner's guide to Paradox. Something you'll see in the background through most of this video is going to be my Time Bombs Primed build here, which is a mostly bomb-focused build. If I am smart and have finished all my annotations by the time this video comes out, this video should be live in the build browser, and the build ID will be linked in the description in case you want to use this build. So let's start by talking about the abilities. Pulse Grenade is first up on the docket. It is basically a new ability from when it last used to exist in the game. The March update of 2026 just kind of reworked this ability to where its base functions are different than what it used to be, and it gets different upgrades as it goes up. So let's talk through the whole ability. You throw a grenade, it lands, it does damage, and then it pulses several times. As it pulses, it expands in radius, and everything that's hit by the grenade gets a damage amp applied to it that makes Paradox do more damage to the victim. Just Paradox. This applies to all of your abilities and all of your items and all of your everything, but it is only for you. So this is actually a selfish buff. That is something to keep in mind, that you are not actually buffing your team with Pulse Grenade, you are just buffing you. So if you're going a Pulse Grenade build, like I have in the background, and I talked about a minute ago, you got to realize that you are in fact just helping yourself, but it is still a very good thing to build around. So the upgrades for it. The first upgrade, really good. 12 seconds of cooldown off it. It's 32 seconds by default. Cutting that down to 20, really nice. Means you can throw it about once a wave in lane if you're throwing it early. The second upgrade adds extra pulse damage and increased spirit scaling. As you can see, by default, it is 0.3. And as we level it up, it goes to 0.8, which is a really, really big increase in how much spirit scaling the ability gets. The last upgrade, however, is probably the strongest for it, especially if you're investing into this ability. You are doubling your damage amp per stack, going from 4% to 8% and adding a second and a half of duration to the ability, which if you're already investing into duration, you should realize that that actually increases the range because it now no longer works the way that it used to. Like I've said, it now just gains a meter of radius per pulse. Each time it pulses, it gets bigger, and it just pulses throughout its lifetime. That is just its base function now. Which means that that extra duration is just extra damage and extra time that it sits there existing. Because the ability goes on cooldown the second you throw it, it just makes it a better ability to max it out. Time Wall has gotten several different adjustments since the latest update. It by default is now just a movement slow, a time stop, and it buffs ally weapon damage. Ally weapon damage means you and your team, by the way. The description for the ability does clarify that. It increases the speed and damage of friendly bullets, which makes this, at its first rank and its default rank, not a super strong ability, but it does slow people who go through it and touch it. It's very brief. It's only for like half a second, I believe, by default to slow people down, but that is sometimes enough to help you get away when you're running away in lane or in teamfight, so you throw the wall behind you and keep running. First upgrade's not the strongest thing in the world, but it does add duration, width, and height, making it a bigger wall, so it's an easier thing to use. The next upgrade here adds a silence to the wall, which is, as I'm sure a lot of people know, it used to be a very strong part of the wall, and one of the reasons why you maxed wall first. It's now on the second tier upgrade, and it is by default a 2.3 second silence duration. It also doubles the weapon damage of any bullets going through it up to 60%. So getting the wall to T2 is now incredibly powerful. Max level just enables charges. You'll probably never buy charges for wall. It's not really that useful of an ability to require charges. And it also lasts for 8 seconds by default with a 25-second cooldown, meaning you're only without it for 17 seconds if you have been spamming it. So It's an interesting change. I feel like it might get changed again in the future, so if it's different by the time this video comes out, don't be surprised. Kinetic Carbine is possibly the most iconic part of Paradox's kit for a lot of people. It is a ability that charges up to give you a bonus shot. When it is fully charged, you actually get bonus move speed, and then when you hit something with it, they get time stop, which just hard stops them and stops anything that's active on them. It does add for some really weird interactions in the game as a whole. Like, for example, if you shoot someone and time stop them when they're about to get stunned by a knockdown, they'll get time stopped, time will restart for them, and then they'll get knocked down afterwards. It's a very interesting idea and an ability, and it allows for some really interesting play and counterplay. It's also pretty powerful nowadays because of how its leveling progression works. It only stops at 0.4 seconds by default, and it doesn't have very high base damage, but you get extra time stop when you level it up once, you get extra cooldown when you level it up twice, and at max level, you get extra charge hold duration, which means you can just hold onto the shot for longer, which is quite good for being able to make sure that you hit it. And it also gets max damage scaling, which is a strange sentence, I realize, that you're getting max damage scaling and not like spirit scaling, even though it does spirit damage. It's just a rather odd little ability. I will say something that's interesting is that the bonus speed that you get does scale with spirit, as you can see here. It scales at a 0.13 rate with your spirit, which means that the more spirit you have in your build, the faster you move while Kinetic Carbine is charged. You can also freeze yourself in air by aiming when you have the ability fully charged and active. It's a really interesting ability. It's something that you probably have to toy around with a lot if you're new to Paradox. Some people might consider this to be the more iconic ability over Kinetic Carbine. I think that they're equally iconic. No, I don't. I think Kinetic Carbine's cooler. Paradoxical Swap is your ultimate. You fire a projectile that just swaps your position with the target enemy hero. It's a really, really strong ability, as I'm sure you can imagine. However, it does put you out of position, which means you have to be quite careful when you're doing it. You can drag people through your wall with Paradoxical Swap, making them be forcibly silenced, and that is a very powerful way of doing it. You can throw out the wall beforehand or while you're swapping, which is pretty interesting. They've basically reworked this ability again. I mean, again, as in another ability got a minor rework. So now by default, it just does damage. When you level it up once, you get a barrier when you swap, and the barrier scales with spirit. The swap damage, as you see, scales at 1.1 times your spirit power, and the barrier actually scales at 1.5 times your spirit power, making it pretty tanky in the late game, meaning if you're going mostly spirit, your barrier will help you survive that swap. You can also combine this with stuff like Diviner's Kevlar to just be tankier after you come out of the swap as well. The second upgrade gives it a massive chunk of cooldown and extra cast range, which means that in place of 95 seconds, it's a 60-second cooldown. This means once every minute, you can grab someone, drag them out of position, and potentially get your team to kill them. And from an even further range. It's a really powerful ability, and it does a lot. The new change that's really interesting, though, is at max level. At max level, you swap all enemies within 7 meters of the hit target and deal 10% of max health as damage, meaning that when you swap, you can just grab everyone in a pile around your target, and you grab all of them at once. Now, this is obviously potentially very dangerous, as you don't always want to grab the whole enemy team. In a recent update, they actually added the ability to alt-fire the ability, and so now when you alt-fire it, you will only grab one target. If you don't know what your alt-fire keybind is, go into your keybind settings and find it. Mine is something that I changed to be when I hold the ability, I alt-fire it, making it just a lot easier for me to remember how to alt-fire stuff. I just hold the ability down for longer. And the game is really responsive to doing stuff like that. Definitely toy around with your settings. So ability order actually matters a lot more than it ever has on Paradox because of how the shuffling of abilities works. It used to be that you would typically just rush wall first unless you were specifically going for a bomb build, because you need to get your wall to T3 for it to silence. Now that it silences at T2, there's a lot more wiggle room with how you want to use your builds. Personally, you can see down here in the corner for a bomb build, I like to get 2 points into the pulse grenade so that you get the cooldown and the damage increase scaling so that you can farm faster in the early game. 2 points in the kinetic carbine so that once you start roaming, you start doing pretty powerful things by stopping people for longer and being able to activate it more often, making it have a very short cooldown and being able to do a lot. I then put 2 points into the wall so that I can swap people through the wall and silence them, or just throw out the wall to silence people and cause mayhem. And then I will put 2 points into the swap so that I will have the barrier and then the cast range and cooldown on it, so that at this point, when we are firmly in the mid game, all of my abilities have what is usually their strongest effect. And then I will go into the build afterwards and max out my pulse grenades so that it gets the extra damage amp, So that at that point, I've usually bought Echo Shard, for example, and I will be able to max my Pulse Grenade and I do a ton. I'll max the ult next so I can start swapping whole teams. Max the Carbine for extra damage, and then at the very end, I'll get the extra charges on Wall. It's possibly the least impactful leveling up ability right now, in my opinion, but it is still worth leveling, obviously. Now, what does all this rambling mean? All this rambling means that you need to pay attention to what stage of the game you're in and how you've leveled your abilities, whether you're using my build or someone else's build. Each of your abilities does stuff differently, stronger and weaker, depending on how many points you've put into it. Pulse Grenade doesn't really do a lot of damage until you get the 2 points into it, and it doesn't do the thing where it shreds the enemy so fast they can't blink until max level. So if you're really playing around Pulse Grenade, you could even consider just maxing it first before you do anything else in your build. Kinetic Carbine doesn't really slow people too effectively and make them easier to catch until you get it to at least 1 point into it, because 0.4 seconds of time stop is a half a second, and while a half second's a long time in a first-person or third-person shooter, you know what's longer than that? 8/10 of a second, or 4/5, depending on who you want to ask. I know math. But not having your Kinetic Carbine leveled means you got to realize, oh, well, it's not leveled, I'm not going to stop people as long. Really realize when you don't have 2 points in your time wall, because going, oh, I should silence them with this swapping and going, why aren't they silenced, is a pretty bad thing to have happen, especially if you're like trying to be competitive and playing with teammates and doing callouts and stuff. Going, they're going to be silenced, and then they're not silenced because you didn't realize that you're using a different build and that the wall T2 isn't gotten until 15 minutes into the game as opposed to 10. Pretty big deal. Swap, it actually doesn't matter as much until you get to the T2. The T2 giving you the extra range and cooldown means at that point you got to go, okay, so I can just start spamming it more, and I can try for longer range things. But a lot of Paradox builds right now are building into greater expansion to make the bomb bigger regardless, so you're probably getting extra range on the swap anyways. The swap can go a very long distance, in case you're not aware. By very long distance, I mean once you buy greater expansion, you can swap someone 51 meters away from you, which is pretty far away. Other very important thing to bring up about leveling order and remembering your leveling order is once you get ult maxed, do not forget it's maxed and accidentally grab whole enemy teams. Trust me, I've accidentally grabbed 5 with my ult before on days very close to the patch day. And oh man, it went really badly. I want to talk about builds now. This is my Paradox build of the moment. I really like building around bombs, so this is my Time Bombs Primed build. I like it a lot. It's been a lot of fun for me and been pretty consistent. Always start with monster rounds to help clearing wave faster, because that means you can use your bomb and your carbine to help poke and shoot at them better, and you'll still clear pretty quick. Headshot Booster is a really good poke item in lane. It's worth selling as you go on in the game, unless you're gonna be a gun carry, but it's still just really strong. Slowing bullets is crazy on Paradox right now. It's 16.7% buildup per shot. But Paradox fires a 5-round burst, meaning that in 2 bursts, you're going to slow them even if you're missing some bullets. Plus, it just has 15% weapon damage on it, so it's just really good right now. They usually turn that into Cultist Sacrifice. Sprint Boots are here because if you haven't bought them before Cultist, you should buy them now. They're also just really good out of combat regen, and you can use them for running boxes early. So you could probably buy these first or second wave if you want to in order to go run boxes more efficiently. I then get Expansion, Extender, and Cooldown, all to make the Bomba better. Extra Spirits in here as a just cheap, easy way to finish your 4.8k spike. However, you can skip it for any number of things. You can skip it for Mystic Vuln, or for just getting superior duration, or you can have bought Golden Goose Egg. I actually think Golden Goose Egg is really good right now. I think it's a lot better than a lot of people are giving it credit for. I think people look at 10% damage penalty in bulk when, I mean, everyone's still buying Cursed Relic, and most of the time in the late game, Cursed Relic is still totally fine to buy, and you will still do more than enough damage to kill stuff. So why is the 10% damage penalty that bad early game? It also doesn't feel as bad to me on Paradox if you're also getting monster rounds. So with monster rounds giving you 25% extra damage to farm, Golden Goose Egg's 10% damage penalty doesn't feel as bad. Healing Right's also here because it is your emotional support healing right. Buy it if you're low, buy it if your teammate needs healing, and you can use it yourself later. Enduring Speed into mid-game because then you want to rotate faster. Extra Stamina into Stamina Mastery because you want to be slippery as fuck. You want to be able to bounce around and be able to get really funky angles to try and hit people with carbine shots to slow them out of nowhere and make them be surprised. It's also really good for getting out after you swap with someone. because everyone knows that every once in a while you'll swap in with someone and your team won't finish the kill like you thought they would, and then you have to panic and get out, and stamina mastery plus enduring speed really helps you get out. It's why it's my normal go-to thing. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff to counterbuy over here. We'll talk about that in a minute. Going into the mid-game, Superior Duration, Mystic Vuln, and Echo Shard are really your most wanted power spikes afterwards. Duration just makes your bomb tick for longer, making it even better. Vuln makes it do Shred, and Echo Shard means you get 2 of them. And by the time it's tier 5 with Echo Shard, it will absolutely solo someone in seconds if they're not ready for it. This whole category is stuff that you will eventually want to upgrade into: Rare Expansion, Superior Cooldown and Transcendent Cooldown, Escalating Exposure, Juggernaut, and Weighted Shots. They're all great upgrades, but if you buy the build as written, buying build as written, as you can see, means that you're actually 2 slots over if you haven't gotten any walkers, which is why Headshot Booster and Extra Spirit are technically optional. They're just in the thing in case. As you can see, we're down to only having the items we would be able to hold on to if we didn't have any walkers, and all of them can be upgraded with items in here. That's the point of this. Now, if you realize you need to be more of a support player as the game goes on, or you're just needing to counterbuild someone pretty effectively, that's what the Category 6 over here is for. It'll probably be renamed by the time it goes live, but get stuff like Spell Magic and Counterspell, Metal Skin, Warpstone. Warpstone's actually quite good on Paradox. It helps you rotate around the map faster, and it's also just bullet resist on it. Plus, the buff duration and teleport range are getting buffed by your duration and expansion if you're buying into the build as suggested, meaning that this item's just a little bit better. Healbane's in here because we don't actually have access to much powerful anti-heal until you get either Spirit Burn or you pivot and grab Crippling Headshot. It's kind of rough. It does proc on your Carbine. It definitely procs on your Pulse Grenade, which makes it pretty good into Victor. Pulse Grenade pulses a lot, and Healbane will continuously re-proc, which is pretty good, but it's kind of hard to proc anti-heal on Paradox sometimes unless you're being really smart about your positioning and your abilities. Disarming Hex, Knockdown, and Cursed Relic are in here, all to be counterplay items. Disarming Hex is great to stop the gun carries. Drifter in particular seems to be doing damage in the Oracle queues from what I have seen in my games as well as watching other people play. Knockdown is great for like the Lash Vindicta, Mina, Grey Talon. You might be like, Mina can dodge it with her bats. Yeah, then you forced out their bats, which means they've used their bats to dodge, and that means that you hit them with the Paradox swap afterwards and they can't get away. Cursed Relic is also just a great counter item. For when you get to the late game and you want to do some big damage, if you're just going pure bomb build, Boundless Spirit, Mystic Reverb, Spirit Burn are your 3 items to buy. You will make people explode in seconds. Surge of Power is also quite good if you're going a bit more hybrid with some gun damage in the build. Pretty powerful stuff. Witchmail, Plated Armor, Spellbreaker, Cheat Death are all in here as I don't want to die in the late game items. And then this final category is if you need to pivot to being the gun carry in the mid to late game. They're also good items to sell Cult of Sacrifice for. Headhunter is really good if you realize you need to be a gun carry because your team doesn't have much gun damage, and it upgrades from Headshot Booster. Ballistic Enchantment just synergizes well with the bomb. Just granting you gun damage when the bomb hits stuff. Crippling Headshot is just wonderful on Paradox. You'll trigger all of the shreds in one shot to the head. It's great. And since you're running duration, it's a 15-second debuff. Spellslinger is pretty good if you have Echo Shard because the buff will last more than long enough. It's a 23-second buff. Lasts more than long enough for you to throw a bomb, Echo Shard, throw a bomb, use a Carbine, use a swap, use a wall. You'll stack it up decently quick, and the extra ability cooldown will just help you a little bit to throw out stuff more often. Glass Cannon is your I'm the gun carry now item. The fire rate per kill actually matters a little less on Paradox than it does on other heroes, but that 80% weapon damage is just massive. Elk Fire is also just great. Bullet Resist Shred, if you're mostly a bullet team, means that you can just buy this and help shred stuff. You can also swap people into the giant AoE. That'll last forever because of duration and expansion. Are you picking up what I'm putting down? These 2 items make you both a really good support and really good damage dealer. Some tips and tricks here about how your abilities will interact with various things on the map. Your Carbine will not slow walkers or guardians, but it does hit them and affect them. Your wall will not save you from their basic attacks either. However, your Time Bomb will in fact stack your debuff onto them, making you do massive damage to them. Obviously, the damage you get from shooting through your wall will still apply as well, meaning that while Time Wall is not here to stop the walker from shooting you, it will stop the other players from shooting you, and giving you a damage buff as you shoot back through it as well, making you actually very good on walker pushes, as long as you make sure that you are in range when you do it. Because if you're outside the circle, you're not doing damage. You can fire the kinetic carbine early. It doesn't slow them for near as long, doesn't do near as much damage, but if you're chasing someone down and trying to get off, say, the last tiniest bit of damage and you popped carbine to speed up and catch them, well, you will do damage as you shoot it. An interesting fact, though, is that if you reload, you will not be able to shoot your carbine at all. I tried to mash my mouse next to the microphone so it got picked up. I don't know if it did, but you cannot fire your carbine while you're reloading because it is attached to your gun in interesting ways. Another useful and fun tidbit is that you can throw out your wall while you're swapping, meaning that you do not have to pre-display, oh, I'm going to go for a swap by pre-throwing out a wall. The timing is a little bit tight, as you basically have to throw out the swap and then hit your wall right afterwards. But if you're going for the swap anyways, you may as well get used to the timing. What's the harm of having the wall out if you didn't get the swap, right? You're just going to have it out for defensive reasons, and people will not be able to shoot through it to hurt you as easily, but you will still be able to shoot through it and hurt them, and if they try and follow you, they get silenced by the wall. A good thing to know is that when you have kinetic carbine charged, you get a little faster, but your movement gets a little weird. You get a little floaty and a little bouncy in interesting ways, and so even though you're faster and your character model is faster, it doesn't feel as smooth as it does otherwise. As you can tell, my movement is a lot smoother when I don't have my carbine completely charged and active, and when I have it active, it's a little jumpier and a little stranger. You're still moving generally the same amount of distance and bouncing around the same, but it'll actually make you a little bit harder to hit if the enemy team isn't used to playing into a paradox. It's a piece of movement that is absolutely worth practicing. Go into the testing area here, turn on no cooldown, get your kinetic carbine out, charge it, make sure you have superior duration so this lasts super long, level up the ability to max, and look how the ability feels. And look at how it feels to be able to pause mid-air while having it fully charged. Because being able to pause mid-air with it fully charged is also a different feeling. And if you have stuff like Stamina Mastery, you can use it to bounce off walls and double jump in the air and be able to float in really weird and odd angles. It's something that's very worth looking into, practicing, and learning how to do. One last little tip here for Paradox. Learn how to bounce off of walls when you're floating through the air. Being able to bounce off of a wall on the side of a building and be able to reposition using your melees is a really good way to learn how to just get to places where your enemy won't expect you to be, and then from there you can swap them out of position into a place where they're not expecting to go to, making them have a bit of a mental crisis of, oh goodness, where am I, where do I go? It's part of the higher skill ceiling that Paradox can have, where you swap people out of position. Another fun and interesting fact about Paradox actually is that you can swap people who are in the air as long as you are hitting your ability. For example, you can actually swap a floating lash out of position when they are in the middle of their ultimate. If I have footage of this, I'll put it here. I don't know if I have any footage of me doing this right now, but I do promise that you can swap anyone no matter what they're in for the most part. For the most part, I mean that Unstoppable does still stop us. So if I can make this guy make Mimic, I'll pop the Unstoppable, clear the follow, I'll pop it. You don't swap them, you just go to them. It's a really odd and interesting interaction, but because people are usually pretty obvious when they're unstoppable, since they added the new visual effect to the ability nowadays, just make sure that if you see someone glowing white like that, that you don't try and hit them with Paradox Swap, unless you are trying to teleport to them. It is tech that does exist. If you know what you're doing, there's nothing wrong with doing it. So that's it for the Beginner's Guide to Paradox. Hopefully you learned something. Hopefully some of these tips and tricks helped you. And hopefully it made you appreciate and enjoy this character a lot more. I only covered one aspect of how to build them in this video as well. There are tons of different builds. I even personally have my own build where I go more into using the kinetic carbine and trying to hit cheeky shots with Mystic Reverb from across the map to trigger a giant AoE spirit burn on the enemy team. It is a thing, it does work, and it's quite funny if you can pull it off. This character's got a lot of room to maneuver and even be just a support for your team as well. So don't be afraid to pivot in the middle of games if you realize you're either really ahead and need to carry or really behind and need to support. Hopefully you've learned something new. Hopefully this has been a helpful video to you. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. All of it really helps the channel out a lot. And I hope to catch you in the next one.